Hey guys, welcome to an intro and getting started video about FlowCanvas. So first of all, let's understand what FlowCanvas actually is and how it can suit your needs. FlowCanvas is a visual scripting solution for Unity, very similar to blueprints that you'll find in Unreal Engine. What's great about FlowCanvas is that you can use it for a range of different things in your project. You can use it in the prototyping phase to make quick, rapid prototypes without having to dive deep into C# systems. You can use it in a larger game to separate your game designer logic from your core logic. FlowCanvas integrates very nicely with C#, so you can very easily communicate effectively back and forth between both. Inside Unity, we can go to Window, Package Manager. Make sure that you have set this to be My Assets. This will show you all the assets that you have purchased in the asset store. Press download, simply import. We don't want to mess with this, we just simply say import. And we just wait for the import process to finish. And there we go, we have our folder called Paradox Notion, inside here, Canvas Core and FlowCanvas. So now that we have the plugin in the project, let's go through some fundamental concepts of FlowCanvas. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create an object in my scene that we can use FlowCanvas with. So I'll just create a square. There we go, basic square. And basically FlowCanvas can work on any game object in the scene. All we need to do is add a FlowScript Controller as a component, then create new. When we create new, we have an option between a bound graph and an asset graph. A bound graph belongs to the object in the scene or in the prefab. An asset graph will create an asset in the project view and allow us to assign it back into the slot. So let's make one of each. A bound graph. You can see here, when I press edit flow graph, it opens up like that. And let's create another square. Add a FlowScript controller, and this time add an asset. And you see we get a prompt to make an asset. So let's just make a test FlowScript, and there we go. So you can see I have the reference to that FlowScript here, whereas this one belongs inside it. All the graph is saved inside here. So whether you use bound or asset FlowScripts largely depends on your use case. If you have a very asset-driven project architecture, then likely you'll want to use the flow scripts because you'll be working with scriptable objects a lot in that kind of architecture. However, if you're more working with components and prefabs, then I think bound FlowScript controller will be perfectly adequate for your needs. So let's go over some FlowScript concepts. So first of all, we have our FlowScript controller components. And you see here, we actually have graph comments. So we can say this FlowScript manages the color of the square. Basically, whatever's going to be useful for when you come back and you don't remember exactly what that FlowScript controller is doing. Now remember, you can actually add multiple FlowScript controllers on the same object like this. So you could have this FlowScript controller manage the color and then this one manage the position, for instance. So it's very much like a component that you would have in Unity. Now, I would say I recommend not splitting it too much, not until you have more of an idea of how big your flow script is going to get. I would say try to stick it all in one and then start to partition as you need to. Now you see both of these have this blackboard reference. So there are variables that you can add on this object blackboard, and they will be shared among multiple of these flow script controllers. For now, let's just use one flow script controller and let's have a look inside. So first of all, let's go over some basic manipulation of the flow script. So by pressing space or right click, you get this little add node window here. And you can see this add node window has all the different nodes split out into nice categories: events, flow controllers, functions, subgraphs, variables, and macros. So a lot of the time you will be searching through these. So for example, I go into events and I look for graph events and I see on start. And we have a nice description at the bottom, called only once and the first time that the graph is enabled. This is called after all on-awake events of all graphs and after on-enable events of this graph. So whenever you're looking for a node, you can go through manually, or you can use the search bar here. So let's say I'm looking for something to do with audio. I can type in audio, and I can see all the different types of nodes that are related to audio. Okay, so let's have a look first at events. So events are basically the way to enter the flow. So some example events are our on start, our keyboard key. So when I press something on the keyboard, in this case, the space key, collision, so collision 2D, if something collides with this. And in order to move around the graph, you can hold the middle mouse key down and simply drag around. You see this hand gets created. If I use the left mouse button, I select the nodes, pretty straightforward. And of course, box select by holding that. And right click, as we covered before, opens the add node window. You can also scroll the middle mouse up and down, back and forth to zoom in and out of the node. And you see here in the bottom right, you have a really nice overview of all your nodes. So you can actually use that to get them back into frame. You can also toggle between a full screen window and a docked window by double clicking the left mouse button. Just make sure you double click on a blank space of the graph, not on a node. If you double click on a node, it's going to open the source script. All right, and let's make a log text for each of these, just so we can see at what point these happen. So I search for log, use log text, and I will say start. For keyboard key space, I will copy that, Control C, Control V, or Control D for duplicate. And I will say space press. And for the last one, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to log out what we collided with. So I'm going to drag other into text, okay? Now, you'll notice that there's this little icon here, this little rounded arrow. And if I press that, you can see here, it's doing an auto convert game object to string. So this is the equivalent of if I were to log this object in C#, it will always go to string, which will be the name of the game object. All right, and we need to set this up for collision. So let's add a rigid body 2D, make this one kinematic. And of course we need a collider on here. So box collider. Then we'll make another object, make a circle. We'll put one here. We'll duplicate it. Actually, before we duplicate it, let's add a collider. So circle collider and a rigid body 2D. This one is dynamic. That's good. And let's duplicate that. So we're going to have this event trigger twice, once for each collision. Let's play the game and let's see what happens. So as you can see, our on start actually got executed. And you'll see when I unpause, this is going to collide and this will go yellow to indicate that this flow has started. There it goes. And you see that happen twice. And it logged out circle, circle. And now for the last test, we press space key and we get that. So that's basically how events work. Very straightforward, very intuitive. So the next thing I want to go over are basically actions. So the log text is an action. Anything that has the flow go through and does something before coming out the other side is an action. You can see the difference between an action and an event by the style of the node. The event has this red border around its title, whereas the actions do not. They're just gray. So most of the time when you're using actions, you're going to be using actions on something. So where do we get that something from? Well, you can actually just drag directly into the graph anything you want to do something with. So for example, I drag the square in, and you see here, any component that has been added to it has a little category. So let's say we go into the sprite renderer, and you see all of this is reflected from the sprite renderer. You actually have access to everything that you normally would in C#. So let's go to properties, and let's say set color, and that creates this node, set color. So as you can see, it has the same style as the log text. It's an action node. has a flow input, so we can connect that up like that. It has a reference to the sprite renderer. In this case, we're looking at self. And if it's self, it will find that component on the object that this flow script is on. So in this case, it will find it on the square. If I were to drag the circle in instead and set the color of the circle, you see instead of self, it says circle, because that is referencing directly the sprite renderer from the circle. And then we have the value here, which we can assign here in this little inspector to whatever color we want. So actually, let's hook this up to the keyboard key instead. And let's have a quick overview of how the flow works. So when this event happens, it goes through this bold line here. It logs this text. Then it exits and continues the flow to set color. So it basically is saying if the user presses space, it will log space pressed. Then it will set color to this color here. Now what you'll notice is that you cannot have this flow connect to anything else. Only one flow can come out of this port. And you see I'll get an error if I try to force that, because the flow is linear. It always has to go in order. And if you have two coming out, the order is not explicit, and therefore it won't work. We always need it to happen one step at a time, just like in code. However, you can have multiple going in. So I can take this and plug it in there. So that would say when the collision enters, it logs the name of the game object, then it logs space pressed, then it sets the color to this color here. So you can have multiple going in, but you can only have one going out. All right, let's play and just see that change color. Now keep an eye on the graph. When I press space, it goes yellow, and my square has changed color correctly. Okay, so the next type of node we want to look at is a function node. So here when I set the color, I am directly doing something. I'm manipulating the component in order to change something. A function node is a bit different. So let's take that sprite renderer and let's do get color instead. And you see here, this does not actually have an in or out flow port. That's because this node is used in order to get data, not to set data. It's not doing anything, but rather providing your other nodes with the means to change data in a more meaningful way. So for this example, what I'll show you is that when I press the space key, we'll change the color of our square to this. Then when a circle collides with me, I will change my color to be that of the circle. So in this case, I'm going to grab my other here, put it in there, and you see here, again, we have this little conversion. We're going to try to get the sprite renderer from the game object. FlowCanvas will do that for us automatically. So we're going to get the color, and then we want to set color. So let's copy paste. We're going to connect this in here. Then we're going to connect this value into there, you see? So the way this works is it's going to go through the bold lines, through the flow. It goes in here, it logs the text. When it tries to log the text, it goes backwards down this thin line and it finds, I need to log the text from other. Okay, that resolves easily. We carry on. When we set the color, again, it goes down the thin line and says, okay, I need to resolve what this color is. I get the color. Where do I get the color? I get it from the sprite renderer, which I find on the game object. So let's change our circles to actually have colors that we can change our square to. So we have a pink and we have a green. And now if we play, there you go. And if I press space, we set it back to that color there. Okay, so next, let's have a look at flow controllers. So when I press space or I press right click on the graph and I see this here, flow controllers, you see there's quite a lot of these. A flow merge, a flow convert, selectors, switches, all this kind of stuff. All of this is meant to help manipulate how your flow goes through. This is how we do conditions and how we organize our graph. So there are quite a lot of these, and it's not within the scope of the setup video to go over them all, but I will go over a couple of examples. So one very common one to use is a switch condition. So you see here, we have an in and we have multiple outflows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm only going to change the color on a collision if I have not already changed it by my keyboard space press. So here, I want to connect the in to here and the false to here, and our condition is going to be a variable. Now, this is not going to go deep into variables, so for now, we're just going to make a simple graph boolean has change with space key, for example. Okay, so I've created that. I can drag that in, and I can put that condition directly in there. You see the colors are the same, the icon is the same. This means that it will naturally go in there. It doesn't need to be converted to anything. It simply fits. And so now here, when I press the keyboard space and I set the color, I'm going to drag this in, set. Now remember, this is an action node because we have an in and an out. It's an action node for changing our variable. And we're going to change it to be true. All right, so let's play and see what happens. So first of all, when this hits, it's going to change green because this is false. If we step through, we can see there. We have not been changed with the space key. This shows us false, and it goes in and it sets the color to be that of the circle. Now, if I unpause and press space, so this executed, it changed us to this color, and our has changed with space key variable has been set to be true. And now if we step in at the point of collision, this is false. Sorry, this is true. Therefore, it will not set the color to be that of that circle. It'll stop just like that. Another useful one is do once. So by using this, we only allow something to happen once. So for example, if we want our collision logic to only happen once, we can connect that. And then no matter how many collisions there are, it will only ever happen once. You see there, because it already happened, it won't allow it to happen again. So there's a lot of these types of flow nodes, and they really help your logic in your flow graphs become more meaningful, more controllable, and more neatly organized. All right, so that's it for this basic setup and introduction video. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you're looking forward to using FlowCanvas now.